Today's guest on episode 14 of the Tone Countrycast with Tim Holland has been called a triple threat by Guitar World. She's a singer, songwriter and multi-instrumentalist, a brilliant guitar player. In 2017, Billboard declared her album, The Project, the best country album of the year. She recently scored her first number one single on US country radio with What Happens in a Small Town with Brantley Gilbert. She's also the current Canadian country music female artist of the year. And last year, she performed in Australia for the very first time at C&C Rocks Queensland and also appeared in the Introducing Nashville Songwriter series. Her very therapeutic new album, Heart Theory, is out this Friday, August 14. Please welcome Lindsay Ell.
Yeah.
How
Look
you
at that
going?
applause. Oh my gosh, Tim, thank you so much. I feel so welcomed.
Well, it's great to have you. Great to have you on the show. You are a prolific touring artist, and you haven't been able to tour. So have you gone mad?
You know, at the beginning of quarantine, it was very weird. It just felt so unusual. I'm used to being on the road 280 days in a year, and I've been in a house for 140. And so it definitely was a 180-degree flip, but it has been really a blessing in a lot of ways, you know. I think that coming out of this pandemic and quarantine, whenever that may be, we're going to learn a lot. We're going to learn a lot about ourselves. We're learning how to do our jobs more efficiently, you know, from the internet and using different platforms and engaging in people in different ways. And so, yes, I miss the road so much. If you could offer me a tour bus and a show with smiling humans tomorrow, I would take you up on that so quickly. But it's just more important for us all to be staying home and staying safe right now. And I'm very much so looking forward to the world getting back to a place where we can play live shows again and you know, see fans in an audience smiling and singing along. But until then, you know, we can still continue this. You know, it actually has been kind of interesting watching how the pandemic, I mean, I'm talking way more to my team. I feel so much more connected to my own team right now. Just because before we always had the internet, but we never got on Zooms with each other. It was always emails back and forth. And, you know, in any one given day, I'm talking to my team in Australia, my team in the UK, my team in New York, LA, Canada. And so it's been kind of cool in the same light.
Cool, but for a temporary period of time.
For a temporary period of time, yes, exactly. When we can get back to normal, it will feel very nice.
Let's go right back to the start. You're Canadian. A lot of people wouldn't realise that, but you're actually Canadian, born in Alberta. And according to Wikipedia, so please correct me if this is incorrect, because often, you know, Wikipedia has some very interesting things about people that aren't necessarily true. According to Wikipedia, you actually were originally a piano player before you were a guitar player.
I was, yeah. I started playing piano when I was 6 years old, and then picked up the guitar when I was 8 because it was a lot cooler to play songs on the guitar. And I was like, all right, this is what I want to do instead. And so I'm really grateful now looking back on it that I have piano as a base, because as far as an instrument, in even just theory wise, being able to look at like the notes laid out in front of you from left to right is so applicable to every other instrument. So I actually say learning piano first is an incredible instrument to learn first, just because you learn the notes in a different way. And then being able to apply that to another instrument kind of opened up my brain to be able to play any instrument and just know, okay, this is the relationship of one note to another. And I just need to learn how those notes, you know, survive on another instrument. And then I can figure it out.
You then started songwriting at about 10. So I'm guessing you had a pretty musical upbringing.
Yeah, my parents, neither of them did it for a living, but everybody played an instrument in my house. And my grandparents all played instruments. Whenever the family would all get together, it was like big family jam sessions. And so I grew up with music around me a lot. It was definitely in my blood. And it was a big part of my childhood because of that. You know, my dad used to drive me to all my shows. He used to play with me on stage when I was little, until I got to the point where I could drive myself. So it was definitely a full family experience early on.
So you were given musical instruments rather than a golf club or a soccer ball or any of that sort of stuff?
I was. Thankfully, I had an older brother, and he was very much so. He plays guitar, but he was really into, when we were growing up, football and basketball and rollerblading and bikes. And so I still had a little bit of a childhood, thanks to him. He always made sure that I would go out and throw the football with them and play basketball.
What does someone write about as a 10-year-old?
You know, my first song I wrote when I was 10, and I wrote it to my parents. And it was so cheesy and so terrible now looking back, but it was called That Place in My Heart. And it was basically like, you hold that place in my heart. So it was my first song ever. You know, as a 10-year-old, at least I had such an open perspective on life. You know, there's still just so many possibilities, and you don't necessarily see all of the heaviness when you're that young yet. And so songwriting can be just a very innocent and happy thing. You know, like I didn't really have many deep songs when I was younger, just because I started from a place, at least, that was just about, you know, playing with my friends and how much I loved my family.
Yeah, typical 10-year-old stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. I guess you're not looking too deeply into your life at that age.
Yeah, I mean, throw in a few years and then it got real pretty fast, but
Yes. You graduated from school a year early. You were a valedictorian, which I guess is equivalent to ducks here in Australia. You got the top marks or whatever. And then studied business, which I guess helps you now.
Very much so. Very much so. You know, it's so crazy. The music industry is such a wonderful industry, but it is very much so the music business as well as the music business. So
it's the music business, not the friends business, as someone.
Yeah, there's two sides of it. And being a businesswoman, you know, running my own company, being my own entrepreneur with everything that I'm doing, I've definitely been able to put those skills to use for sure.
And you did record 2 albums when you were very young. You can't actually find those albums on Spotify. They've been put away. And I guess when you make an album in your teens, it's very much, I guess, a learning experience, isn't it? I mean, you know, you're still working out what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I was just starting out. I was still figuring out how to write songs, what I wanted to say, how I wanted to say them. You know, I started working with a guy by the name of Randy Bachman when I was really little, when I was 13. And Randy is from some bands called BTO and Bachman Turner Overdrive and the Guess Who. They had songs like American Woman and Taking Care of Business, and they were like big in classic rock. And so Randy really helped me from the beginning to learn how to write a song and how to record in a studio. And so from the beginning, you know, I sort of even had a mentor guiding me through that process. And we ended up recording things. I mean, the only way you really learn about something is by jumping in and doing it. And so I was really grateful, though, because through recording those 2 independent albums, I learned a lot about the business as well as the recording creative side of it, and discovered that I didn't really want to sign a record deal in Canada. I got offered one, and yet a lot of my friends who were Canadian artists would sign record deals in Canada, and then they'd come down to the States to try to sign a record deal there, and nobody would want to sign them because they already had all of the pieces of the pie given out to their people and their team. And so I got offered a record deal when I was 16 And I had a very smart man, his name was Alan Reed, sit me down and say, Lindsay, you don't want to sign this record deal. And I am so grateful to him for that, because I really feel like if I would have signed that record deal, who knows what would have happened. But he basically said, he's like, you're so young, you're 16, like, keep writing songs, go travel, keep playing shows, and you're gonna find your place. And he's like, you will always be able to get a deal up here, but if you really want to go down to the States, you should explore that. And so I'm so grateful that he advised me not to sign that first record deal when I was 16. And so for the next few years, I just toured, and I played for 4 hours on stage every night, learning how to be a performer, learning what to do when amps blow up and chords die and monitor speakers don't work and the whole sound system stops working. Like, you just learn how to do your job, so to speak. And even when I've moved to music towns before, it's kind of crazy how many people don't know how to perform necessarily, because it's a whole other thing.
Definitely.
Like writing and singing and performing, they're all different parts of the brain, and it's like muscles that you need to train and work and develop. And so I feel like from the age of 16 to 20, I was developing those muscles. You know, I was juggling school, trying to figure out how to make all that work. And then yeah, I came down to the States.
So you were doing the 10,000 hours, I guess, that people talk about.
I was totally doing the 10,000 hours. Exactly.
Which a lot of artists don't do at the moment. I think, and I can imagine it's 16 and you've got someone offers you a record deal. You think, oh my God, wow, this is amazing. Of course, this is everything I've ever wanted.
Yeah.
But it's often, as you say, you got some very good advice then, because you don't need a record deal at 16. Sure, if you're going to be any good.
I mean, there's been crazy wonder stories where, artists have signed record deals at 16 and have become massive superstars. I mean, Britney Spears and Justin Bieber, just to name a few, but
not really in country though. I don't know.
But
well,
yeah,
other than
right.
Taylor Swift, obviously.
There's a few of them, but generally, sometimes it is worth taking those extra few years to really find out the right place to go.
And so you then didn't release another album until 2017. So you had was going to Nashville something you wanted to do at a very early age? Was that always the intention?
Yeah, I always wanted to go to Nashville. I always wanted to discover what Music City meant, and sign a record deal in the States was always my dream. I went to LA first. I was writing there for about 6 months, and just trying to get songs and meet as many people as I could. And somebody was like, Lindsay, I think you'd really like Nashville. Like, they have some of the best songwriters in the world. And so I remember walking off the plane with one person's name on a piece of paper. That's the only thing I knew about Nashville. And I took about a year and a half, and I went back and forth between Nashville and Calgary. I was still waiting tables. I was going to school. I was playing shows on the weekend. I would make enough money to buy a plane ticket to go down to Nashville. And then I'd spend 2 weeks in Nashville writing songs, and I'd pull triples. And what that means in Nashville is you write 3 songs a day. So you write a song from 10 till 1, you write another song from 2 to 6, then another one from like 7 till 9. And then I would go to writers' rounds at night to see songwriters perform and meet them, and then go up to them and be like, hi, my name's Lindsay, would you write a song with me? And so I was just trying to meet as many people as I could and really, build my tribe in Nashville. And I did that for a year and a half. I went back and forth every 2 weeks. I spent so much money on plane tickets and hotels and all that business. And finally, after that year and a half, I met up with this production company, and we cut a couple of sides, and they had a meeting, and I got offered my first record deal.
I know that Australian artists who have the same ambition to go to Nashville and make it in America have this challenge of being Australian. when we go to Nashville, when we go to America, everyone is very nice to us. They take us out to dinner,
Yes.
treat us like kings. And then, of course, people like myself then go home. Then, Australian artists go over there and work out that, they've got to, I guess, acclimatise to the American market rather than the other way around. Right. Is that as difficult for Canadian artists? I mean, I think there's more Canadian artists have cut through over the years than Australian. I mean, we've got a couple now that are doing pretty well, but generally it's been pretty difficult for Australian artists to cut through in the way, obviously Keith Urban has, and now Morgan Evans has probably been the one that has as well. There are a couple of other young ones that are starting to make a mark. But what have the challenges been in being Canadian, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I have so many Australian friends. I mean, I write with a lot of Aussies. I brought my bass player, my music director of my band is from Australia. And I brought him over.
We'll talk about him soon because he's a mutual friend of ours.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Yeah, he's one of my best friends in my life. And my roommate a few years ago was Australian, Nikita Carmen. She's so talented. So yeah, I love surrounding myself with Aussies. That's an interesting question. I definitely think as a foreigner, it's difficult to, move to a country. And generally when you're first starting out, you can't even move somewhere because you're not making any money and you're a foreigner. So you're not on a visa that can allow you to make money. Or if you can make money, you can only make money doing that thing. Like
which is a big issue for some artists at the moment that I know over in Nashville, where they can't play, so they can't make money.
Right, they can't play. And so when I got offered my first publishing deal, that was the only way I was able to pay my bills. And here my friends were working these side jobs and being waitresses and waiters, and I couldn't do that because it wasn't allowed under my visa. And so it is difficult. It's difficult to, transfer from another country and try to start from the beginning when you can, you have to deal with things like visas and figure out how to make money and figure out how to survive. And I would say it definitely is even harder for, Aussies coming over, because in Canada, we can pop back and forth pretty easily. And so, I was able to go back home and make a little bit of money and then come back down and kind of survive it that way. So yeah, there are definitely roadblocks and speed bumps to work around. But I just know that when the people that I surround myself with in my life, it's like when we figure out what we want to do and when we sort of plot out those things, you just figure it out bit by bit, small step by small step, and you slowly get closer to that goal.
Let's talk about our mutual friend, Eric Fortaleza, who is he's your musical director now, is he, effectively?
He's my music director of my band. He's such an incredible bass player, one of my favorite musicians that I've ever heard play. He just is such a beautiful human being. Like, I love my band so much because they're so flippin' talented, but I love them even deeper because they're just great humans. And when you're on the road with people 24/7, it definitely matters how they play. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm so inspired by them at every waking moment, and I wouldn't want to make music with anybody else, but I'm more inspired by their hearts and who they are as people. And Eric is just such a beautiful human being. Like, he makes you smile, and
he does.
He is my road family. He's awesome.
So he actually used to play in my partner Jasmine Ray, her band. So I guess you kind of stole him to a certain degree. However,
I'm so sorry.
No, we're very, very, very happy for him because a couple of years ago we did a tour with Granger Smith.
Yeah.
And
he played.
He played on that tour with Jasmine's band, and everyone. It was like within a day, it was like one band. Granger's band and Jasmine's band became really close, and that's when I saw Eric really get the bug to to go to Nashville, and I think he got an opportunity to play for you in Australia, didn't he?
He did.
And
yeah, I got recommended his name from Granger, funny enough, because I was talking to Granger, I was talking to Morgan, and just trying to figure out a band, because I was in the middle of a 32-day tour around the world that composed of, I came from Germany, went to Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and so I was doing most of it solo, and yet had a few band shows, for CMC and around Sydney, and I was like, well, I'll just hire musicians there. And so I got referred Eric's name, and I remember checking him out on YouTube, and I saw him do like a couple of John Mayer covers, and yet I, recorded the whole Continuum record, and I was like, well, we're gonna get along fine.
yeah,
And then as I dug deeper, I'm
Yeah.
just like, whoa, this dude is on another level. Like, he's just so gifted and talented. And I know, like, it is not that hard to be an okay musician, but it is really hard to be an excellent musician. And I know the kind of mastery and effort and passion it takes to get to that level. And you could tell that it was like oozing from his YouTube videos, that if it oozes from a YouTube video, then you know what it's going to be like live. It's going to be so much better. So yeah, I hired Eric, and I got introduced to, part of his community in Sydney, and just everybody was so wonderful. And so I was like, hey, if you guys ever want to come over, let me know. And he's like, well, I actually have been thinking about it. And at that point I was like, he's just saying that. And sure enough, a few weeks later, he sent me an email, and he was like, I'm serious about this.
No, because I remember, because he needed to get his visa sorted out, and so
Yeah.
he was, I need a letter of recommendation, and I need it like tomorrow. Sure.
You're so sweet.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for being part of the process to help him.
We're very proud of Eric. He's a great man, and as you say, very dedicated to his music, and a John Mayer freak. Loves John.
Aren't we all?
Yes.
Aren't we all?
and so you obviously did this the Continuum project, which was obviously doing the songs from the John Mayer album. Has John given you any feedback on that record?
He has, yeah.
It's good, I hope.
Oh yeah, after I recorded it, actually he was playing in Nashville whenever it was. Time is just so blurry these days. But yeah, he called me backstage and just said, Lindsay, I just wanted to say I'm so touched you recorded this whole record. I've never had anybody do that before, and it was so cool, and you're so talented, and so it was really, really cool of him.
I can imagine.
And that's all I wanted to know, when you record somebody's full body of work, like that's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into that project. And so I just wanted him to think it was cool, and I wanted him to appreciate it. And so the fact that he did, then mission accomplished.
It's also the ultimate compliment for someone to do that as well.
Right?
Yeah, it's one thing to like someone's music.
It is one of
to
the
actually
most perfect
go and record it
ever.
yourself, is quite the task. So
it is quite the album.
Now, you have just started your own web series, Living Well. You've had some great guests on there, Brandy Clark, Carly Pearce, Maddie and Tay, Dan Huff, your producer, just to name a few. And this has been really cool. It's giving everyone a bit of an insight into this new album, Heart Theory, which is out this Friday. I guess, was that something you decided to do because of the pandemic more than anything?
Yeah. At the beginning of quarantine, I was actually pretty busy at the beginning of quarantine, because we were finishing recording the record, and we had our last band tracking session the day before Nashville shut down. And then I had a bunch of vocals and guitar parts to do that I finished in this very room I'm talking in right now. And then in the midst of that, I'm like, man, this is so weird. I don't know what I'm going to do when I'm not playing shows. I'm so used to interacting with fans all the time and having all these shows to travel to. And now that I don't have that, what could I do? And also, when I turned on the news, everything was just so heavy. There was just so much going on, and it was like, this is a lot. Like it's just a lot to take in. And so I was like, I just want to start a weekly talk show where I talk about good news. or talk about the good things going on. I can interview my friends talking about what is good in their quarantines, and just have it based on positivity. And so that's how I started Living Well. And now, since I've gotten to release a few songs off this next album, and specifically a song called Make You, which is about my story as a little girl, and I was able to launch a foundation around it. And so I'm able now to grow Living Well in a direction that I didn't even really see coming from the beginning of it. But I use it as an extension of my platform to talk about things that I really care about, and bring on some guests, and, you know, friends and guests that that we can talk about some issues that are truly important.
In one of those episodes, you actually talked to Jimmy Allen, I think around the time of the whole George Floyd incident. And what's your view on artists talking about politics and social issues? You know, there are some people who think artists should just shut up and sing, so to speak. I don't believe that at all. But then there are others. I mean, there are acts that have made a living making music, you know, inspired by social issues. So you seem comfortable in talking about that sort of stuff?
Absolutely. I think that having a platform gives you also a responsibility to use your voice for good, and use your voice for things that are important. And, you know, talking about politics or religion is very subjective and very personal, but talking about human rights issues is far superior to both of those things. I mean, I feel that, you know, when we have human issues on our planet, if artists are not using their platform to talk about it and to raise awareness and to help everybody educate ourselves, because at the end of the day, a lot of these problems stem from our own ignorance of not knowing what's going on. And there's so much going on in our world at any given moment. It's hard to keep up with all of that stuff sometimes. So if anything, I feel empowered that artists should talk about human rights issues and these movements that we've been through in the past few months that are just so incredibly important. And they're so incredibly important because they are all based on humans learning how to love other humans on this planet better. And when it's about that, I don't think there's ever a day that people shouldn't talk about that.
Let's talk about the album you're about to put out, Heart Theory. You say that it's an album about each stage of grief. I find the album to be very uplifting in the way you've approached this, in terms of the real content, the production, and of course it concludes with a very positive song, Ready to Love Again. So I like to think it's certainly an album of hope.
It definitely is an album of hope, and I'm so happy you feel that way. You know, my favorite kind of songs are songs that make you want to dance, but actually say something. You know, I call them sangers. I call them sad bangers, because they're like, they make you want to dance, but then you read the lyrics or you listen to the lyrics and you're like, man, that's deep. Like, that's saying a lot. And so I started writing this record 3 years ago, and I was about halfway through writing it when I realized, man, I'm writing these songs in the order of what I'm experiencing and feeling these things right now. And how cool would it be to write a concept album that top to bottom, you like listen through it and can hear me unravel with my emotions and hear me get from this place, like this transformative place, from A to B. And you know, I'm such a nerd about a lot of this stuff. I read up about it all the time. And yeah, there's this thing called the 7 stages of grief, which sounds so much more heavier than it is, but it basically talks about the process that we go through as human beings on this planet to transition through any transformative time in our life. That could be from a relationship, that could be from the loss of a loved one, moving, losing your job, whatever that may be, going through a global pandemic. I mean, we go through moments of transformation in our lives all the time. And so I just wanted to write a concept album that was like, okay, in order of the stages of grief, from stage one being track one of shock to denial to anger to bargaining, all the way to the last stage of being acceptance. Track 12 is an acceptance where you can fully look in the mirror and accept yourself for everything that you are, knowing that everything that's happened into your life has made you into the person and beautiful human that you've grown to be. And so it's been very exciting to write this thing from the beginning to now, and I cannot wait to finally release it and get it out there and share this story with everybody. And I hope that this music can be support if people need it, empathy if people are looking for it, or it can be, a roadmap if they're looking to dig a little bit deeper, or they're going through this transformation time in their own life for whatever reason, that they can look at these songs and be like, okay, this is how I did it. Now it's your turn.
Mm. In this album, you have revealed a couple of very horrific things that have happened in your life, which, takes a lot of courage for anyone to do that at any time. Was there a moment when you decided, a specific moment when you decided, you know what, I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to sing about this? Was it?
3 years ago, I went to this place called Youth for Tomorrow. They're an organization here in the States that help with kids aged 12 to 18 who have just gotten into the wrong things or have become survivors and victims of sexual assault and sex trafficking. And so I went there 3 years ago to help them launch their music program. And I ended up sitting down at this conference table with 12 other little girls. And I sat down and told them my story. And I listened to their stories. And Tim, you would just hear the most horrific things. Like, there was a 12-year-old girl sitting beside me. She said, yeah, my parents sold me to a sex trafficking company when I was little. And you're just like, what? Like, it's so hard to believe that this stuff happens in our own communities and in our own societies. And it really happens far more than we want to admit it does. And so I left that place that day knowing that if I didn't take this opportunity to talk about my story, I was holding back an opportunity to help little girls like that, or help little boys like that, or help grown adults like that, because I truly think this happens far more than we want to acknowledge. And the first step to doing something about it is speaking up about it. And if I had somebody to hold my 13-year-old hand or my 21-year-old hand when I was going through it and just be like, Lindsay, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. You're not alone. You didn't do anything wrong. I would have healed so much faster. And so if I can be that to specifically other kids, I'll know I'm making a difference to them. Through releasing Make You, I was able to launch my own foundation. It's called the Make You Movement, and we're specifically focusing on disenfranchised youth and survivors of sexual violence and domestic abuse. And I just truly want to be that hand, to hold their hand and be like, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this together, and help them find a deeper level of healing sooner.
I think it's wonderful what you're doing, and definitely, I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people, young and old, as you say. This stuff happens all the time, unfortunately. Let's talk about another song of yours, I Still Love You. Now, you were in a very public relationship a number of years ago with a very famous radio personality in the States, Bobby Bones. We don't really know much about him in Australia, but over in America, he's a big deal. And now, you actually didn't write this song, but
I did not. No, it's the only song on the album I didn't write. But sometimes going into the studio to record an album, I'll write probably 250 songs going into a 12-song album, and I'll probably listen to 800 plus outside songs going into a 12-song album, and just to find the best songs. And my rule is always best song wins. And when I heard I Don't Love You, it was just so honest. And I think it's a song that a lot of people can relate to. You can think of past relationships in your life and be like, okay, I don't love you the same, but I still miss you sometimes because you mattered to me. And anybody that we share our lives with for a long period of time. I mean, they're good people. Otherwise you wouldn't have chosen them to begin with. And so it's fine to be able to look back on a memory and be like, okay, I don't want it back. I don't love you in the same way, but I still think about that sometimes. I mean, that's just a quality of being human. And so I just thought it was such a unique perspective of looking at it. And you know, Keith Urban once told me, actually, he's like, if you find an outside song that is what you wanted to say, but you know you wouldn't have necessarily written it that way, you need to cut that song. And he's like, Lindsay, outside songs are like a jacket. You put it on and you see if you can like move in the jacket, if you can dance in the jacket, and if you can, then you need to cut that song. And I Don't Love You was that for me for sure.
Because I know when you released that, I think did Bobby actually play that on his radio show?
He did. Yeah, Bobby has been such an incredible supporter of me from the beginning. You know, even before we were dating, he's just always been such an incredible fan, and I'm so grateful to him for that. And yeah, so he played the song when it came out, and he actually had a charity show at the Ryman and invited me to play, and I had to sing that song on stage while he was on stage. And I basically sang it to him in front of, you know, 2,000 people at the Ryman. So it was a memorable experience.
Literally the book on how to break up with someone. You know,
hey, I mean, the thing is with public relationships is, I mean, if you are on social media, you're choosing to put content out there. And so, you know, regardless of where that line is in your own life, that's your choice. And so that was my choice. That is my choice as an artist. I choose to share my life with my fans and that they can truly walk this journey with me. And so for me to, you know, draw lines around what I can and can't say, it just feels unauthentic to me. And I feel like I should be an open book. I mean, as a songwriter, that's how I'm inspired by most of the writers that I, you know, look up to and respect, is because they're just so honest. And so really this whole album is not necessarily about one relationship in particular, but it's more about heartbreak in general and how we can truly grow and learn from everything that we've been through and every relationship we've been through, and you know, any transformative time in our lives, how we look inward. You know, we can look in the mirror and truly learn how to love ourselves again, and through that, you know, work through the tunnel and come out the other side in a whole new light.
Absolutely. Women in country music, there's been this really weird problem, and I say weird from where I sit here in Australia, because it's not something that anyone talks about on our radio airwaves.
Right.
Women not getting played enough.
God bless you.
There's a problem. I mean, lettuce and tomatoes and all this, there was all this carry on about that a couple of years ago. Is the situation improving? I mean, and I guess, is this a hard thing for you to talk about? Because you obviously want to be on the radio and don't want to say the wrong thing. No,
I mean, it's been an issue for a while. And, you know, I think, again, the only way we fix things, so to speak, is by talking about them. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely been an unbalanced ratio for a hot minute. But I feel that any industry is cyclical. Like you literally look at any industry and there are these patterns that sometimes happen, regardless of what that pattern is about. But, you know, women in country music, women in other genres of music, like in pop music, for instance, they are very female rich and very female heavy right now. And it didn't necessarily always used to be that way. Country music used to be very female rich in the 90s. There were so many females. You probably would have heard more females on the radio than males. And so
exactly, that's why it's been so weird.
It's been so weird because it has been a minute. It's been a long time, but I do feel like things are going in the right direction. You know, I am the ultimate optimist sometimes, and I try to always find the silver lining on a situation, but but I do truly feel like things are headed in the right direction. More female artists are being signed to record labels who are just so flippin' talented and are releasing great music. And at the end of the day, I feel like fans want to just hear great songs. And a lot of the females are writing and recording the great songs right now. So I feel like it's only a matter of time where we're slowly going to see, right now we're slowly starting to see those ratios. There were 7 females in the top 50, which is not where it needs to be, but it's better than it was, because before there were 2.
And there seems to be a real camaraderie between the young female artists in particular, really supporting each other, which is, hasn't always been the case, but I know I spoke to Kelsey Ballerini about this last year.
Yeah.
And you guys train together, when you put out songs, you will almost promote each other's music. It seems to be just a generation of artists here who really appreciate the opportunities they have and aren't, supporting their fellow artists and supporting the cause. There is, obviously there should be more female music on country radio, and I say that as an Australian who really shouldn't have an opinion, but
you definitely have an opinion.
But it seems like the female artists are not only trying to push their careers, but the careers of other female artists as well. And that seems to be contributing to what you're saying. Yes, there's improvement. There's still a way to go, though.
Yeah, there is definitely a way to go. It's a very unique community. I love Kelsey so much. She's such a sweetheart. And yeah, I agree. I feel like as females in country music right now, we support each other because we know how hard the other girl has worked to get there. We know what it takes, and it's not rocket science. Girls need to work harder than guys in this format. We just do. It's just a harder path to pave. And so I feel like there is a camaraderie between us because we just know what it takes, and we have that underlying level of respect for each other that's like, I see you. I see what you're doing, and I know how hard it is. And so it's cool. It's been really neat to foster some friendships, and some friendships that I couldn't even replicate with other friends in my life, because these other female artists know what I go through. They know the battles that I fight. They know how hard radio is. They know how, a lot of our ups and downs go. And so, I have a lot of amazing female artist friends.
One thing I always ask our guests on this program is if you had a piece of advice for a young artist just starting out, one really, really important thing, what would that be?
I would say trust your gut. When I was starting out, I was just so wide-eyed, and I wanted to be a rock star traveling around the world, playing for thousands of people every night. And I was just ready to do whatever it took. Somebody would say jump and I would say how high, and I was there. And I think I've been through a lot of seasons in my life where I kind of ignored that inner voice inside of me, whether it was telling me what songs to cut, what songs to write, how they should be recorded, what, agencies to sign with, whatever it was. And it took me a minute to navigate through that. And if I would have been more intuitive to listen to myself, I would have saved myself a lot of time. Because oftentimes we know what we need to do and we know what is the best thing. And it's sometimes very difficult. But yeah, I'd say if you're a young artist starting out, just truly look inward and figure out what that unique voice is and how it sounds, because nobody is going to be like you, and that is going to carry you further than anything else.
Absolutely. That is very, very good advice indeed. Lindsay Ell, thank you so much for chatting with me today on the Tone Countrycast.
So much.
Good luck with the new album, Heart Theory, which is out this Friday, August 14. Thank you for watching the Tone Countrycast. Remember to click subscribe so you get all the new episodes as soon as they go live. I'm Tim Holland, and I look forward to your company next time on the next episode of the Tone Country Cast.